See this right here? See all these images? All these over New York City? It's 15,000 feet above the city. First time it's ever been done in an open door helicopter. We're about to tell you how it took 2 years to get this shot. Welcome back, guys. I'm Paul.
And I'm Alex, and we're Back Left Media, a production company that specializes in aerial storytelling.
This is going to be perfect.
Can we turn the nose?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Wow, incredible shot.
If you can hold it right here.
That's amazing. Yeah, that was crazy.
So it's November 2022, and we are about to take the highest open door helicopter flight over New York City, 15,000 feet above the ground. But in order for me to tell that story, I got to rewind almost 2 years prior to a flight that I did in January of 2021. All right, so let me give you some perspective. Normally, our helicopter flights, the altitude that we're flying at is somewhere between 1,500 feet and 2,000 feet in general. That gives us close enough to use a telephoto lens to get really tight details and wide enough to kind of give you this vista expanse of the city that really resonates with a lot of people. Through the years, we've done what we considered at the time were high altitude helicopter flights. And those ranged basically between 5,000 feet and 8,000 feet above the ground. These flights were like grail shots. Whether or not we did it for sunrise, we did it after a winter storm, we did it as the sun was setting and the city lights were coming up. Each time was really and truly a special experience. And the people that were viewing always really appreciated that wider perspective, this look at the size and the enormity of the city. So these flights are always special. There was always something in the back of my head of, I wonder if we can go higher the next time. And that little thought, that nagging little thought in the back of my head is what started this entire journey. So it's January 2021. We are just starting to come out of the pandemic, and not a lot of things creatively were going on just yet. The world was still kind of getting back to normal. A pilot friend of mine suggested that we take a fixed wing flight over New York City. We've been talking about this for about a year, and it's a January afternoon flight. Not the greatest light, but really clear atmospheric conditions. We take off from a small little airport in New Jersey, not really knowing what to expect. We start by going to New York Harbor and flying a low pass past Manhattan, probably 1,000 feet. And we flew all the way up to the Tappan Zee, and it's now the Mario Cuomo Bridge. It was a new bridge at the time, so I wanted to get some images and include that. So once we got those images, a couple rotations around the new bridge, we decided to come down but ask for clearance to go up higher than we ever have. And that was about 10,500 feet. By the time we got over the city at that altitude, I realized that this was something really special. Now, being in a fixed wing airplane shooting through windows, it wasn't the ideal situation from what I'm used to. I'm used to no doors, nothing in the way, no reflections, no wings in my frame. So while I absolutely cherish that moment, I cherish it for two reasons. One, it was the first time I went above 10,000 feet and saw the possibilities. But it was also because it was the catalyst for this flight that we're talking about today. Once I got down, I realized I need to find a way to do this in a helicopter, and I need to go higher. And that is how Skyscraper was born.
So it's 2021. Paul and I had just wrapped on our first big project together and what would eventually become Back Left Media as it is today. He was telling me about this flight that he took and how as soon as he landed, all he could think about was, how do I do this in a helicopter and how do I go higher? So, naturally, we started to talk about what it would take to make this happen.
So now the planning begins for this. Typically when we had done these high altitude flights before, it was just kind of like another helicopter flight, but higher. But this time there was so much more that went into it. We had to make sure that we had the right type of helicopter. We had to have the right pilot that could understand what we were looking for. Our coordination with air traffic control needed to be that much more in depth, and our planning down to the minute, down to the foot of elevation that we're getting to, everything had to be on paper beforehand. So this just alone in logistics was one of the more complex flights that we'd ever done to this day. Not to mention, we needed to figure out what time of year do we want to fly. Atmospherically, what was that going to look like when we're up almost 3 miles above our subject matter? Would the lenses and the cameras that we normally use, would they be the right tools for the job? So we started to outline everything, make phone calls, figure out who was interested, who wasn't, what it was going to take, how much this was going to cost, because this was a different level of production. And with that came a different level of price tag.
Typical flight for us is anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 an hour, and to do what we wanted to do, we needed a special aircraft, and we need to be up there a while to get up that high. So we were looking at north of $6,000 to $7,000 just in flight time alone. And while Paul and I are no strangers to funding a lot of these projects ourselves, this was just a little bit outside of our comfort zone. So we, got our head together, started brainstorming, and ended up reaching out to our friends over at Canon. We had done some work with them in the past and always been able to work really well together. So we told them about this idea, told them what we wanted to do, and luckily they said, "What do you need?"
What we realized then was that we only had about 6 weeks to make this work from the time that we got all those details lined up. Our prime window was around that first week to second week in November, and that date was fast approaching. I remember it's already been almost 2 years since that first really high altitude flight, and I was not interested in waiting a whole nother year for our weather window. And so this was when we went into this kind of hyperdrive pre-production and making this idea really come to life.
And let me tell you, Paul had some ideas.
So now that the planning was beginning, these ideas that I was starting to have over this last year plus were starting to come into fruition. I was trying to filter out the noise from everything, and I think the most important part for me was, how can I show that what we're doing, beyond it being unique in and of itself, being the first flight of its kind, how can I show something that is going to be relatable to everybody else, right? So we settled on the idea of starting in Central Park, halfway between the north and south parts of Central Park at 1,000 feet, and moving back and moving up in 1,000-foot increments. So that way what you're getting is a comparable frame, and how each 1,000 feet, how much more exponentially you're getting to see from that view. And in my mind, that was the cleanest and the most concise way to be able to illustrate how special this flight was going to be.
And so now with this plan in place, we had a much better idea of how the day was going to go and the flight. So we went back to Canon and started to work with them on what the other side of this project was going to look like. And that was the video that was going to live on their channel. And we were going to make a video for them telling the story of this flight, our experience with the gear. How does it hold up? We were going to be paying close attention to things like battery life, stabilization. It's going to be cold up there. How are these things going to hold up? And Canon in particular was really interested in both the photo and the video side. So they sent us the R5C. We took that up with us. And at the time, this RF series, both the cameras and the lenses, were still relatively new. They were unproven, they were untested, and what better way to put this gear to the test than up at 15,000 feet in a helicopter where the stakes are high and there really is no room for failure, especially for how much it costs every second that we're up there.
So as we're starting to approach the final week, we start to be able to look at weather. We start to be able to look at all the things that could be an issue for us. And as much as we had planned, as much as past experiences have played into when we decided to fly, this year turned out to be different. The weather atmospherically was not going to be what we expected it to be. And we had a 3-day window, 3 days to choose from, to hedge our bets on when this weather was going to be the most optimal for us. Typically this time of year, atmospherically, the air is crisp and clean and it is beautiful and you can see 50 miles in any direction. This particular week was much warmer, much more humid. So that meant that there was going to be haze between me and my subject matter, which was going to be almost 3 miles away from me. This is something that is very concerning. How do I get the details that I expect out of my images when I'm shooting through this layer of haze? And even when we decided on the first morning, when we showed up in the morning, it was, for lack of a better word, swampy out already. It was not optimal, but we knew that this was the day that it was either gonna happen or it wasn't, because the next 2 days were gonna be even more warm and more humid. So it was go time. So the day is here. It is starting, and we arrive at the hangar before sunrise, probably somewhere between 5:30 and 6 in the morning. The last few minutes before takeoff, we're going through the checklist of things that we need to be reminded of. Again, we clarify this is where we want to be when we want to be, and he reminds us that there may be moments where we're going to have to wait for airplanes, which we did. With all that kind of housekeeping in place, it was time to get in the helicopter. The idea was to get to Central Park before the sun rose. So we were up before the sun, and there was a beautiful kind of pinkish glow in the sky. The city lights were still on, which is what I wanted. I wanted that transition as we got higher for the light to change and progress from pre-dawn into golden hour. And that was basically going to take up most of our 90-minute flight. The reason why I wanted to start that early is because I wanted there to be that glow in the sky and the city lights to still be there, and to show the light as it changed as the city lights came off and the sun came up, how it just changes the scene of what you're seeing. Not only the altitude, but the light. It's a huge part of what we do is playing with the light and understanding where it's going to be, how it's going to affect the scene. And this is part of that project, was planning all of that. So it was go time. This was it. We were at position 1 and get the shot. Check. Next. 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet. Now we're about to go higher than I've ever gone before. 12,000, 13, 14. And by the time we got to 15,000 feet, it absolutely blew me away. So 15,000 feet, it has been achieved. Mission accomplished. The goal was to get one picture every 1,000 feet, and we nailed it. Got every single increment that we wanted, and it was really amazing just to see how much more 1,000 feet of perspective gives you every single time. So we're up at 15,000 feet, and we still had some time left, so we decided, let's see what else we can get. And these images proved to be some of my favorite of the entire flight. So the flight is over, and we're going through all the images, and we start to share on social platforms like we all do. And there was an incredible response to them. I think that as an artist, when you come up with an idea that has never been done before and you bring it to life, there is a part of you that is, I'm putting a piece of myself out there. Was this a worthwhile idea? And will it be remembered? Will it be thought of when people are talking about New York City? I think that the number one metric that we try and relate success to is, are we still proud of this work? And to this day, almost 3 years later, we are definitely still proud of this work. And it was exciting, and it was fulfilling, and it was something that I'm exceptionally proud of. And I'm so happy that this was one of these foundational projects that Alex and I started to work on together. We know now that no matter how big the idea is, that we can bring it to life with the right amount of planning. Together, we can do what we're setting out to do.
So that's it. That's the story. I don't even know if we even said the name, the official name. We called it Skyscraper. And there were a couple things maybe that I wish we would have done differently. I really wish we would have had the cockpit audio for you guys. But, as Paul had said, we're super proud of it. And we wanted to get it out there. We wanted to give it a space here on the channel and tell the story once more for everyone. So, just thank you so much for making it this far and for listening and following along. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that. It really does help us a ton. You can share it with a friend and let them know what we're up to. Again, all of these things really help. And we're just really appreciative to have you here so that we can keep making more videos just like this one.
So tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your mama, get everybody to come on out. If you like what we're doing, we'd love to have you around, because the fact of the matter is we're just beginning. Yeah, I guess after all this, the next question is, when are we doing 20,000?